So let's sort of go through this for a minute. If we think about risk perception, the D trait, as we know in any conversation with a typical D trait, that they tend to be comfortable taking calculated risks and they're driven by results. So when it comes to very safety orientated behavior that you're looking for about to do a job, they're quickly calculating risk and they're doing it in their own head, and they're not necessarily seeing a lot of value in the documented risk assessment process, and they're more likely to just think through risk and reward. They're more likely to be doing that in that context than anyone else. How high risk is this versus how fast am I going to get the job done, and how will it help me get the job done? So because they're driven by results and they're quite comfortable taking calculated risks, they're probably more likely to take those risks that other people in the organisation may see as not an acceptable risk. Where if you look at the I traits, they're generally the ones that start to downplay risk a bit because of their enthusiasm and optimism. They're generally a little bit more overconfident in capability of not just self, but others as well. So they're more likely to have overconfidence in people's capability and people's engagement with risk, and downplay the risk as not being as serious because they're positive, they're optimistic, they don't want to shut things down because something's too risky. So, they generally overcompensate that because of their risk perception is based more on people's capability and overconfidence in things going well and it won't happen to me type process. Where if you look at the S trait, they're quite cautious. They prefer to avoid risks. So their risk perception is much higher. They're less likely to do the higher risk activities. They're probably more likely to be the one to privately come around and say, I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't really want to do that. They would generally find constructive ways to do the lower risk activity. So volunteering to be the standby person, maybe volunteering to do the housekeeping and clean up, maybe volunteer to go get the equipment back from the workshop. They're the ones that will tend to volunteer to go into the more lower risk activities rather than get stuck into the higher risk activities and just get stuff done. When you look at risk perception for a C trait, they are even more cautious. They want to do detailed analysis. They are enjoying the step-by-step. What's the task? What are the risks? What's the risk assessment? What are the controls? They're driven by their cautious nature to really plan it out and get it done in detail. And then you could sort of think about, well, if I've got a team that's got that going on, you could potentially see the conflict that could come up in there. You could see the dominant trait, but wanting to get in and get stuff done, and then the C trait wanting to go, no, we haven't finished the process. We need to fill out this. We need to sign this. We need to document this. So you can see where some of that conflict comes in.